Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone. Blendi Muriqi here for another episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. On today's episode, we have a good friend of mine, a real estate expert, Phillip Warrick. Now, Phillip is an interesting individual in that he's one of my first clients that really has transitioned from long-term real estate to the short-term rental space. And I figured he would be a fantastic guest to have on to really talk to people out there that are interested in investing in real estate. They don't know where to start. Now, the great thing about Phillip is he's not only an investor, he's also a certified high-performance coach and philanthropist. So we're going to dive into a lot of topics today. We're going to dive into short-term rental management. We're going to dive into real estate investing. And we're really looking forward to having an insightful conversation with Phillip. Phillip, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. Give us an introduction of how you started in the real estate space. When did you buy your first property? And for people that are listening that are interested in investing in real estate, give us like the framework for someone that doesn't know anything about real estate, how they should invest.
Blendi, it's awesome to be on your show. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. And I've heard a lot of great things about your show and your clients. And so hopefully we can add some value to them and actually help them to pivot in their business or take their business to the next level. But to answer the question, how I got started, it's interesting because when I was a 17-year-old senior in high school, I remember going to my dad and asking him, hey, Dad, when I go to college, what would it take for me to buy a house and actually rent rooms out to my friends? That way it would pay for the house. And he's like, man, son, that's a great idea. And Dad wasn't a real estate investor. He was a missionary. I grew up in the mission field of Brazil for the first 10 years of my life, right? And when we came off the mission field, Dad ended up starting a business, right? So he was an entrepreneur. And I know his parents had rent houses when he was growing up, but he didn't have much knowledge in that field yet. But he said, you know what, son, why don't you save up 20% down, build your credit. I can make introductions at the bank and help you start doing that process. And by then you'll be able to, put 20% down on a house. And I think that's a great idea. So I was like, okay. So I set out to do that. Well, one night I was watching late night television and an infomercial came on. And there was this old gentleman leaning against a bar stool talking about his home study course. And he was talking about how to buy houses with no cash, no credit. And I'm like, oh, dang, this sounds like a shortcut. So I ordered that course. I had to wait for it to come in the mail. This is before the internet. Now you can buy a course and click and boom, you got videos, right? But anyway, I dug through that course and that training and started making calls to sellers and trying to get houses under contract with creative finance and all these different strategies that he was teaching. And I flipped a little trailer house across the street from my dad's business. And that was like my first experience. Bought it really cheap, cleaned it up and sold it really quick, made a little bit of money. But my first real house investment property I bought when I was 21 years old. Right. And that was the next year I bought 2 houses. The year after that, I bought 2. Right. So slowly, 1 or 2 houses per year. And about the 3rd year into it, I realized, man, this is actually legit. So I decided to go full time. So I've been a full-time real estate entrepreneur now since December of 2003 and have done hundreds of houses, everything from buy, fix and flip, buy, fix, renovate, refinance, and repeat before the BRRRR strategy. If you've all heard about the BRRRR strategy was even coined. Right. And so went full time in December 2003, haven't looked back, do a lot of creative financing deals still. And especially in this market that we're in right now, being a buyer's market, getting houses on terms, buying houses from sellers who are willing to accept monthly payments and creating terms with them is a strategy that I utilize a lot.
Can you dive into that a little bit? Like for those that don't know what creative financing is and how it works, could you talk through from start to finish? Because typically, you go to a bank, you get financing to purchase a property. You have to put down 20%, depending on the property, even more nowadays. How exactly do you go about creative financing?
Okay, this is great. I think I just thought of a deal that will fit in perfect with what you guys do, right? And it was before 2008. I think this was like 2005 or 2006. I got a lead that came across my desk from a seller who was pre-foreclosure. Like he was literally a month or two away from losing his house to foreclosure. And this was a house in Lake Conroe, right? And I was like, man, this looks like an interesting deal. So I called the guy and we, got to talking about it, and we found out exactly how much he owed on the property, how much the payments were behind. And what we did is we actually renegotiated with the bank and reinstated his loan. So we purchased his house, gave him a little bit of moving money, and then we took over the monthly payments on that loan. So instead of going to the bank and getting our own bank financing to pay off his bank, because the only people that make money on that transaction is the two banks. So instead, we reinstate the loan, brought the loan current, and then took over the payments. He deeds us the house and we take over the payments, right? So that's one example of creative finance. And that was my first experience with short-term rentals. Back then, we were using vrbo.com, but back then, this was before all the tech and all the tools were great like we have now. We're spoiled now, honestly, because back then it was like a lease agreement in the mail, check in the mail for a deposit. Like my sister helped operate that, right? And it was a huge business. But yeah, that's one example. Another one would be just a seller that's willing to accept monthly payments instead of, all cash, or us having to get our own financing, right? Where we negotiate seller financing with the seller. So
yeah, sometimes the seller, I've seen this where they're also older and they don't need the money and they just want the income. And so maybe they're in their 70s or 80s and they're already retired and they're not doing anything with the property as it is. So it's a win-win for everyone, for them to take on the mortgage and get those monthly checks with, a preferred interest rate.
yeah, absolutely. And, as you learn these strategies, you'll learn the why sellers would say yes, right? And when you can touch on those, a lot of times you're having to educate them, right? So some of my previous sellers have become my private money lenders or private money partners, because it's like, hey, what are you going to do with these funds? Oh, we're just going to put it in the stock market, or we're going to invest it over here. Well, how would you like that to be secured by real estate and get you a good return, right? And
yeah, partner and I purchased a property during COVID in the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. It was just raw land. And we went to see the property and it was absolutely beautiful. We were just kind of driving around looking for plots of land and we noticed this beautiful property and we tracked down the owner, and it took us a few weeks, but we got in touch with the owner's daughter. And then the owner's daughter said, this guy, he doesn't live in Tennessee anymore. He lives in Georgia. And we got on the phone with him, and he was an 80-something-year-old Southern dude, and he had absolutely no intention in selling it. And then, we offered creative financing with the deal and basically take on land. It had already been paid off. He had owned it for 30 plus years, and he gave us a really good deal where we're only paying like $2,000 a month for it at like a 4% interest rate. And deals like that would be much more expensive had you gone the traditional route of going through a bank, especially with land. The seller, in the beginning, he didn't really want to sell. What you'll notice is there are certain individuals that they've held properties for decades and they want to keep that status quo. But when you explain to them the benefits of the income that they'll be seeing, that's when they're a lot more flexible to a owner financing deal. So in this case, we were able to get really good terms on the deal where we're paying a very low monthly, mortgage on the land, and he's getting passive income off of a property he's owned for decades.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a couple really good questions to ask a seller, right? So if I could get you your price, are you willing to give me what I need, right? Or if I could get you what you want, are you willing to give me my terms, right? And kind of structuring it that way. And another one is like, hey, what if you're going to make an investment with this capital anyway? Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it make sense to continue receiving income from this property as opposed to you managing it yourself, right? We'll handle all the work and you get the income secured by the real estate that you already are familiar with. So it makes sense a lot of times for them to do that.
In terms of your transition to the short-term rental space, you had mentioned before that on that previous deal, you had started putting the property on VRBO. What was the trigger that got you to start investing into like furnishing these properties, putting them on Airbnb? Was it an individual you met? Was it, online resources that you saw? And walk me through a little bit what the obstacles in the beginning, because I can imagine that transitioning from long-term real estate investing to short-term, it's not as smooth as many people think it is. We were talking about this offline. You're going from just maybe speaking to a tenant once in a blue moon to having to deal with guests on a daily basis when it comes to their concerns.
Back to that deal, it was a lake house. So our first thought was like, hey, this is great. This is a vacation home. And we used to go there. We would take off the weekends, right, and go out there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday a lot of times. But we realized that with the short-term rentals, we could actually own a vacation home, right? So back then, to me, and it never even clicked, like, man, I should do a bunch of these, right? It just was like, hey, this is a cool opportunity. Let's buy it and we'll rent it to pay for itself and we'll stay there when it's not rented, right? And so that was the first thought. But when I got into the creative stuff, one of the things that you talked about, and you touched on philanthropy, right? And providing housing is important. Providing housing for people who want to own their own home to us was important too. But a lot of times people can't walk into the bank and qualify for a mortgage. So we did a lot of long-term rent, and we did a lot of what's called rent to own or seller financing programs, where we're actually giving buyers the opportunity to rent the house out until they can get their credit situated or their finances in place to where they could actually purchase the home. So we did a lot of these rent to own programs, lease options, owner finance, and all of these things, right? So that's what we were doing, and we've done that for years. And if you heard me a minute ago, I said before 2008. Right. So after 2008, when the market crashed, all of the guys and the gurus that were out there teaching all of these things, they all disappeared. A lot of people took a bath during that market crash, and I'm sure you've heard about it. A lot of people actually started investing in real estate after that as well, and they did really good. It's interesting because, we continued doing the rent to own, and we didn't suffer as much as other people because we're providing houses for rent and we're buying creatively. So we didn't have to sell. The people that really got hosed are the people that are in the middle of a flip, right? You're in the middle of a flip and the market crashes. You thought the house was going to sell for 200. Now it's worth 100 and you're 150 in. Right. And so they had a problem, but we could just turn around and rent our houses, continue our program on down the road. But back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, all of the old gurus that were gone, I started getting their emails again, right? They all started kind of coming back on the scene. And I started getting emails about Airbnb and this Airbnb strategy on how you can buy houses or even do the rental arbitrage. You can rent long-term, furnish it, put it on Airbnb, and make the difference between the two. If you're paying $1,000 a month and you're bringing in $3,000 a month on Airbnb with no risk, that sounds great, right? So a lot of people that went through the crash are like, oh, well, this is a great way to control some properties, make the income, and not have the risk of owning the property. So I was like, well, this sounds good. So I went full steam ahead, man. From 2017 till I think 2020, we were doing a combination. Some of the houses we owned, but the majority of them were rental arbitrage. We were
Meaning you were renting the properties?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
I'd rent it long term. I would at least try to get an option to buy, because I'm a real estate investor. Hey, I'll rent it from you for 3 years. Give me an option to buy it at this price, right? So I was doing it, right? And so we ended up, I think 27 listings is what we had in 2020 when COVID hit. So guess what happens? Airbnb lets all the guests cancel their reservations. Now I'm sitting with 20-something properties and no income. I'm like, holy crap. What did we just get ourselves into? I had like, oh my God, it's 2008 all over again. But we slowly used COVID to get out of those arbitrage properties one at a time. And so while everybody else was quarantined, we're over here shutting down houses, moving it to houses that we own, and kind of restructuring and resetting up. And so long story short, we're doing it now with properties that we own or with student partners that we coach, that we do deals with together, but we own the properties now, right? We want the benefit of owning that real estate, not just the rental income.
Of course. You had mentioned the student side, that you do a lot of coaching. Nowadays, you see a lot of people in this coaching space. I personally have friends that they're certified coaches, and I've done coaching sessions for my business, and it's immensely helpful. But I'm always curious to hear like how people get into this space, because there are a lot of people that are trying to achieve financial freedom. And so talking to and having guidance, having a mentor like you is hugely beneficial. How did you start coaching, and how are you actually reaching out today to people to help them through their real estate journey?
It's a great question. I think back in my journey when I first started, I didn't hire coaches, right? I just went to books and I went to seminars and I got as much information, self-education that I could. And like I told you in the beginning, I was just doing a few deals a year. Once I started getting coaches and having coaches, I went from doing a few deals a year to doing a few deals per month. Right. And that's really what allowed me to scale my.
Is it because of the network it provides you, or is it just straight knowledge?
I'm an avid student, right? And as an avid student, like I'm always learning. Here I am 23 years later and I'm still learning. I still have coaches, right? So one thing to think about is like, hey, if you're going to hire a coach, make sure that they have a coach, for one. The second thing is make sure that they're actually doing the business that they're coaching on. A lot of people learn from books and tapes, and then they go try to teach from what they've learned, and they're not really getting real world experience, or they quit doing the business because you can probably make just as much, if not more money teaching it than actually doing it, right? So maybe they learned, they did some deals, and they're teaching from that experience, but not continuously educating themselves. But the answer is there's coaching for the business that you're in. There's personal development coaching, right, for mindset and for your own personal self journey, kind of like what you would coin life coaching, which is what the certified high performance coaching that you touched on is about. But I also do real estate coaching in the business. And I feel like as an experienced coach, being able to help people get to the next level and help them shorten their learning curve. Because think about this, you can take my 23 years of experience, and if you have me as your coach, you're basically gaining 23 years worth of experience, right? Through my coaching, my failures, my successes, right? What's working best now, what's not. And to be able to have somebody like that, as opposed to trying to figure it out from reading books. And like, I'm looking right in front of my computer, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books there. There's books behind me right here. I'm constantly learning. And so being a student, it's my responsibility to bring this knowledge back to somebody, because when you make it and you reach the top of what success you're trying to achieve, and if you look around and you're alone, you did it wrong. You got to be bringing other people with you, right? So turn around and help the next person in line that's trying to learn it, and help shorten their learning curve so they can avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes. And that's why, I'm a true believer in being coached and actually coaching others. And then from that too, Blendi, it brings up amazing relationships and opportunities, partnership opportunities, where we can joint venture and do deals together, because through the coaching experience, we're going to learn if we're fit to work together or not, right? And so it's kind of like dating before getting married, right? I don't want to partner with you in JV on a deal, because that's a big project, right? But once you know that you work well together and the people that you're coaching actually do what they say and that kind of stuff, it helps weed out the people you don't want to do business with.
And I'm sure you've had, students that, after a certain period of time, you're like, because certain people, they have the character traits that meet that requirement to being a partner of yours, to doing a deal. And then there are certain people that they're just not aligned well with you. And you don't know that until you spend a significant amount of time with them, coaching them, talking to them, to see whether they have those character traits.
Absolutely. I agree. 100%.
Now, you were talking before about like failures and successes that you've had, and being able to convey those to someone that's coming. Maybe they're just becoming an entrepreneur, they're trying to start their business. What are, in your eyes, what are the biggest failures that you've had in your life, and why are you proud of those failures? What has those failures done for you to really mold you into the business person you are today?
So I think we touched on one already, right? It's trying to go alone. Going alone without a coach, without mentors, there's already somebody who's figured it out, right? That's one thing. Another thing that sticks out to me, and it's been something that I've constantly failed at, and sometimes I still feel like I fail at, and that's literally going to fit right into what you guys are providing, right? It's delegating. It's building a team around us, systems and procedures to actually operate the business so that I can scale. I'm a real estate investor, right? Short-term rentals, that's just one of the exit strategies that I utilize. I still want to buy, fix, and flip houses, right? So I'm using the short-term rental strategy as my strategy to hold these properties. But with that, it comes with a huge operations, right? I mean, I don't know how many people are on your team, but the people that are on our team, and the cleaning ladies, maintenance people, my wife, me, our personal assistant, and then plus your team, plus there's so many people involved, right, to make that work. And so being able to systemize your business and actually put policies and procedures and SOPs, right, standard operating procedures in place for every little thing is something that I've failed at, right? And I've tried to hire people here and there, but I'm not a good manager of people, right? I'm out here doing the business. My money is made by the text that I just got while we're getting ready for this call, that the contract is signed, right? We just picked up another property that we're going to be buying subject to. And, that's where I make my money. The Airbnb, the short-term rentals, it does provide some income. It provides opportunity for me to employ a bunch of people, my family, my teams, and everybody else, right? So that fits into philanthropy. Sometimes I look up and I'm like, why do we do this? And then I remember the people that are making a living from our business, right?
Yeah.
But I think going alone and trying to figure it out all yourself is the biggest mistake, right? And teaming up with people like you and partners and students and just growing it so to where you can have a bigger impact.
Definitely. One thing I had to realize very early on when I started in the property management space was, you can't do everything alone. I hear you mentioning your wife a lot of times. Like it's cool that you have a partner that you are with 24/7 because your businesses are aligned, your family relationships aligned. I know for me, when I started in the property management space, I was doing everything myself. And I realized that the growth of the business was being hindered because I was wearing too many hats. And then I started really reading about the big businesses out there that have been able to scale in a very short period of time. And the one kind of overlying trait of each of these businesses were that they hired really competent people and they had good managers in place. And they were able to take all of the different components that makes a business great and compartmentalize it and then delegate those components to certain people. Even at our company at Delegate, we're still trying each and every day to figure out what is one component of our business that needs to be worked on that we can continue to delegate and bring on new people for. So definitely on the short-term rental side, it's a business model that requires a lot of delegation and reliance. You have to rely on your housekeepers. You need to be able to really rely on them. Your guest communication team, you need people that will manage the listings. It's a lot of hats that people are wearing.
It's funny because I heard you say you, but it almost sounded like you said Hugh. And one of my coaches and mentors is Hugh Hilton. And one of his terms, one of his big phrases is like better, faster, more efficient. How can we do it better, faster, more efficient? That should be the first thought all the time. How can we make this process better, faster, more efficient? So it goes hand in hand with delegating, right? And if we can build a team to control these processes and always be looking at what can we do to make it better, make it faster, make it more efficient, then we can continue scaling the business. And to touch on the whole wife part, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We are together 24/7, been married 23 years this year, but it feels like 50, you know what I mean? Because we're together 24/7. Most couples get 8-hour break when they go separate ways to work, you know what I mean? But I'm the visionary, right? Like I'm go out there and make stuff happen. I want 10 more deals a month. And she's like, can we slow down? I'm like, I'm just getting started. You know what I mean? So I think the team is going to be important to be able to continue scaling without burning her out, right? So,
Oh, of course. Happy wife, happy life.
exactly. I can't have my wife be the personal assistant. You know what I mean? So we need more
No,
assistants.
no, 100%. Now that you're investing in real estate, you've got your hands in Airbnb. Because you're a coach, you need to be able to market yourself to individuals, to your students. And I can imagine you don't have like a marketing background, right? You started, when you were 21 years old, purchasing properties and whatnot. So those skills, you didn't learn those skills at the university level. You don't have a PhD in marketing. And I'm always curious to hear the process by which people, like successful people that know how to market themselves, their personal brand, how they went about doing that. How did you realize, okay, I need to market myself and these are the things I need to do in order to get my name out there? What was that process like?
It's a good question. Back in 2004, I was at a real estate training, and this is the first time I even paid attention to marketing, but they had one of the speakers come in, and these real estate trainings back then were like every hour a speaker comes in and sells another product. But one of the speakers that was there was actually Dan Kennedy, right? And Dan Kennedy had the no BS magnetic marketing. And so I'm a student of Dan Kennedy's and have been since 2004, right? And so, like I said before, I'm an avid learner, right? And I'm always digging into this information and these things. And, Dan's whole thing is like, hey, you're not in the business that you're in. You're in the business of marketing the business that you're in, right? I'll tell you that one of the mistakes, again, I have the knowledge, but the implementation is where we're lacking, right? And I need a team to be able to implement these marketing things, right? Because I can sit and learn all day long, but if we don't implement, right, we're just entertaining ourselves, right? I often tell my students, hey, I'm not here for entertainment, guys. I'm here to educate you guys so you can go implement, because education without implementation is simply entertainment, you know? So let's go out there and do some deals and get something done. But the marketing is very important for sure.
Yeah, I've seen some of your content online, kind of educating your students, educating prospective people on creating financing, real estate investing. So I can see that you're investing in your personal brand. That's something that personally, I think a lot of businesses are realizing nowadays, that the traditional route of advertising and marketing is dead. If you're trying to advertise whether it's your coaching or courses, your company, the cost of advertising is super high. And people are realize all these different mediums where we can really promote ourselves, promote our businesses, whether it's through social media, podcasting, newsletters. There's so many different outlets. Personally, like I don't have a marketing background, but what I'm realizing now is you have some value to give to the world. You have some knowledge to give to the world. And if you're able to put that knowledge out there in good faith, there are going to be people that want to be around you and want to work with you. That's why we do podcasts like this, because we want to share tidbits of information to people so they feel empowered to make a life for themselves, to grow their businesses, to handle some of the obstacles they're handling on a daily basis. That's on the marketing side. I want to ask you, in terms of the deals that you find, the real estate deals, because a lot of people, like you said, they may have read a lot of books, they may have had a coach, watched YouTube videos, they're looking to invest in real estate. If you were to give advice to someone that's trying to purchase their first investment property and they're like, I don't know how to find these properties, where would you start?
That's a good one. So real quick on the marketing part, we'll call it marketing and branding, right? I'd be foolish not to mention JT Fox, right? One of my coaches that I've been with for about 3 years, and we do business and we partner together. And he's huge on celebrity brand. And if you think about it, all the big brands use celebrities in their marketing. So why don't we? And a lot of times it's because we don't have access to how do we connect with these celebrities. And every now and then you might luckily be at an auction event or some charity event and meet a celebrity, and that's great for the branding. But JT Fox, he's the world's #1 wealth and business coach, and he's huge on celebrity branding and using podcasts to build relationships like we're doing here to find good relationships and people to potentially do business with. But, getting noticed will get you leads, right? People are attracted to people who are successful. People are attracted to people who are actually out there posting that they're doing business, right? So you'll see a lot of that. I post about deals that we're doing. Posted last Sunday pictures of me with Joe Foster, literally the founder of Reebok. Spent time with him. We actually toured the Red Bull racing facilities in London together, right? I got his book and got that autographed, and I've had a few moments with him, and I'm actually scheduling to interview him on my podcast. And these things get attention, so it attracts people that want to learn from you and do business with you. Celebrity branding and all of this stuff is important, and just constantly putting yourself out there, showing the world, hey, we're actually doing business. People want to do business with people who are posting about doing business, not people who are posting about being on vacation at the beach. I want to do business with people that actually have a work ethic. So there's that. And I think as far as like finding deals, now real estate creative like we do, they're off-market properties. This isn't a house that's listed on the MLS and everybody knows about it. These are marketing methods that we use to attract people who would potentially have a house for sale or a problem that would indicate that they need to sell, right? So we're looking for off-market properties, people who are behind on payments like we talked about earlier. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they're a tired landlord and you get an eviction list from the courthouse. Like, who's all the landlords that have evicted somebody this month, right? These are creative, strategic ways that we market to them to get them to call us. And that's what I train my student clients to do. I train them on all the different marketing strategies they can use. And just yesterday, I went over a list of like 36 different off-market strategies that you can use to attract these types of deals, right? And so I think for somebody getting started first, it's like, hey, learning these strategies, learn from a coach, learn from somebody that's doing it, get involved in a community that's what they're doing. So that way you can lean on their success like we talked about earlier, and then we can figure out where to plug them in into getting started. But it starts with marketing, right? If you don't have a client, you don't have a business, and our clients come from motivated sellers who need to sell. Like, the most important thing in their life right now at this present moment is to sell their house. We just closed on a house 2 weeks ago today, and the couple was going through a divorce. The wife had already moved out. They're literally 12 months behind on their mortgage. The husband is still in the house with the dogs, living on an air mattress, right? The house needs paint and carpet and repairs, right? So all of these things they need to sell, important. And so we were able to give them some moving money, brought the loan current, took over the payments. Get this, it's a VA loan, 2.65% interest rate on their mortgage. And that's the loan that we just took over. So
big picture, do you see, because, you hear a lot of real estate experts analyzing the market, whatnot, and they're saying that because interest rates are so high right now, people are reluctant to sell their properties because they know as soon as they sell it and they're relocating, let's say, they're going to be stuck with a mortgage that's, double what they had previously. What do you see happening over the next few years in terms of of movement in the market? Do you just see like all the transactions that are occurring with these creative financing strategies? You think that people, as interest rates stabilize and people realize like this is the new norm, they're just going to start purchasing properties at the current interest rate?
Yeah. And so these interest rates are pretty much technically normal. And so the low historic rates that we have not been normal. I don't think rates are going to drop back down to 2-3% like they were before. They might just kind of stay here and go up and down a little bit, but that's definitely what's affecting it. And people don't want to sell to go get into a higher interest rate. But what we touched on a minute ago was people that have to sell. Yeah. There's always going to be people going through a divorce, people losing their job, getting behind on payments, houses that are run down, right? There's always going to be that, no matter what type of market that we're in. And as a creative real estate investor, that's our job, is to find those people and solve their problem and meet their need. One house we're buying, we're literally closing on the 12th, right? So that's about 5 days from now. This couple had their house on the market for sale. They've had to keep lowering the price because now we're in a buyer's market, right? So interest rates are higher. So offers are coming in lower. And then they already bought another house, or they were closing on it, and the contract fell through after their inspection period. So it was like, man, they have to sell. So we were approached by their real estate agent. They know that we do creative finance deals, and they see if it's a solution that we could meet their need. And it was. We're able to get this thing under contract, and we're taking over the payments on their mortgage. We're giving them the money that they needed to finish the closing on theirs, or to pay back their family that they borrowed their down payment from. And then we're going to step in and take over that property and hold it as a long-term rental, maybe short-term rental, but you'll have to convince me to furnish another one.
The interesting thing you said there is, real estate agent came to you, and that speaks a lot to having a solid network in place. I see it right now. Like, I'm trying to purchase a property with a partner here in New York, and the partner has a very good relationship with this broker who has all of these like pocket deals, off-market deals that are significantly cheaper than, I feel like anytime you see a property on the market on the MLS, it's like, it's too late. It's not going to be that great of a deal. It's the deals that you have brokers bring to you that are kind of, you're the first person to see the deal. You're the first person to get in touch with the owner. Those are the opportunities you have to look for versus going on the MLS where you're going to pay probably above market on the property.
Yeah. And what we're finding right now is that a lot of houses that are on the market, they've got long days on market, or in the example I just gave you, it fell out of contract. So if you see one that went from pending to back to active, that indicates that something happened during the inspection period and they weren't able to negotiate. So a lot of people, if they've only bought their house like 2 or 3 years ago when the rates were still down, but values haven't gone up, they don't have enough equity to actually list, market, and sell through a real estate agent, pay the 6% commissions, pay the 3% seller contributions to the buyer's closing costs, pay for the renegotiations after the inspection. So then a lot of times it's like they'd have to write a check to sell that house. And one of my students is actually an agent. He was representing a buyer last week, and he realized at closing, the seller from the property his buyer was buying actually had to cut a check for $8,000 to sell that house. Had they approached us first, we may have been able to purchase that house subject to and take over the payments where he wouldn't have to write a check. Because when we're buying a property, we're looking at the cash flow. Obviously, we want equity too. We want to buy it below market value, right? But to me, full market value is if I can get it for 10% less, which is the same that they would get if they paid 6% commissions and closing costs and everything else. So if I can get the house for 10% off, I'm getting 10% equity. But if the monthly payment is less than what we can earn on the rental income, I'll pencil it first to see if it underwrites with long-term rental. And then if it pencils with long-term rent, so for example, this house is $1,450 per month and we can rent it for $1,900 a month. So it pencils. But then I'll look at Airbnb after that and be like, okay, well, if we furnish it, can it bring in more, right? So then I'm looking at it, can I bring in at least $4,000 on Airbnb, and then I would potentially furnish it and do it that way to make the extra cash flow. But that's what I'm looking at first, right? And so the equity part is not as important to me, because as long as it'll cash flow, I can take that asset and purchase it. And as long as I can keep my acquisition costs at, what do most people put down when they buy a property for investment? 20% plus closing costs, right? So if I can keep my acquisition costs at that or below, then I'm good.
Interesting. And I mean, if you're planning on holding it, you know that over a span of 10 years, you're going to build equity in that property.
Oh yeah. I mean, historically, 10 years, it'll be double in value, right? Even if it only goes up 3 to 5% per year, that's a bonus. I don't look at that as like, oh, I'm going to buy this deal because it's going to be worth double in 10 years, because nobody can predict the future, but we can look back in history and see that it's always gone up and doubled every 10 years. There might be some dips, but if you can hold enough. The other benefit we get is principal pay down. So every month when we make a payment with our rental income, the mortgage balance is going down, right? So in this example, that mortgage payment goes down $352 with this month's payment. The one that was the 2.65% interest rate, last month's payment dropped it down $432. So every monthly payment with rental income is paying down that balance, right? So that's an added
and giving
benefit
you,
as well.
and essentially at that point you're taking in the cash flow, profiting from the property, and at the same time your equity in the property goes up.
Yeah, so you're buying equity up front, right? You're getting the appreciation, property value going up. You're getting the principal pay down, so the mortgage balance going down. You're getting the cash flow, right? The difference between the rent and the mortgage payment. And then the fifth one that most people don't talk about as a bonus, but you get depreciation. You get the tax write-offs for owning rental real estate, which actually can offset some of your income to save you on your income tax. There's a lot of benefits to owning real estate. So,
but you chosen to invest in a particular state. So like we're in completely different, I'm in New York City, you're in Texas. The one caveat is be careful where you're investing in, because not all cities and states are created equal. I had one of our clients, they had a long-term that they had put on Airbnb. And unfortunately, the person that rented the house 8 months, after the first month, they canceled the reservation and decided to squat in the property. And in New York, as soon as you hit day 30 staying in a property, you now have squatters' rights. And in the city of New York, you are not getting a day in court, in housing court with a tenant until like 6 to 8 months in. And it's very, for anyone, and you hear it all the time from people outside of New York, they're like, I would never touch New York City real estate because of that problem. I'm sure in Texas it's completely different, where if you have a tenant that's not paying, they're out after X number of days.
I agree. Texas is a much friendlier, landlord-friendlier state than New York. So I'm in Texas.
Yeah.
You got teams.
Yeah.
I think we have the make a new business opportunity. We should be doing business together, Blendi.
That's one of the beautiful things about working with real estate companies and helping them really staff up their operations is you start learning one, I've learned a lot from not only short-term rental operators, but long-term rental operators. And it's become a network in and of itself. Like I'm now doing real estate deals with partners, clients that I have that have become partners. So one client that is in Miami, he happens to be a rabbi, and he's now coming to me and saying, let's do a deal together. Let's get something going. The reality is that if you could speak to this, like if you're able to provide people value in the marketplace, and they're going to trust you and they're going to want to work with you on different deals. And I've seen that with, every client that we've worked with, where we provide them the infrastructure to maintain and grow their business. And then they're like, oh, do you want to invest in this property with me? So it goes hand in hand. Once there's trust, there are other opportunities at play.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool, man. Well, I want to give you the opportunity for everyone that's watching, advertise and market your coaching services. Where can people find you online? We're going to put links in bio to your websites, but I guess give us your closing pitch to anyone that's watching that's interested in real estate investing in your coaching business. We want to hear it.
Yeah, perfect. So phillipwarrick.com, right? So hopefully my name is on the screen, but that's my website. And what I'll do is I'll share something with you later. Give me some time to put something together. Maybe we can do like a free giveaway, like something to download some resources. I do have a couple of different like books. I can give them like a free link that they can download to learn more about my journey and my story. One book that I got to co-author called Think Big with Kyle Will, like just a bunch of amazing people, right? Some celebrities that they'll be excited to hear from as well. A bunch of short stories. I think that would be a good giveaway just to get them into my system, right? And maybe even provide a link, like anybody that wants a free strategy session, maybe we'll do a quick 15-minute, Zoom link where they can, book me for a Zoom and get to know each other one-on-one personally. But phillipwarrick.com is the main thing. I'm very active on, all the social medias, so you can look me up there on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all of that. So I'll share all of those links with you too that you can
Awesome. We'll be sure when we post this, we'll be sure to tag you in all of them so people can go straight to your social media page.
And back at you, I'll be able to share this as well. So just give me some things that you want me to do to connect people with you as well, to offer your services with Delegate, which is a huge part of our business right now.
Definitely, definitely. We have a different assortment of, we have different businesses that we represent at Delegate. And we really love working with long-term real estate investors that have transitioned to the short-term rental space because we're able to offer them a lot of value in our staffing solutions. So hopefully real estate investors out there watching this, that maybe they're interested in transitioning to the short-term rental space, but they don't want to take on a property management company. They just need the staff members that have the expertise. We're a perfect fit for those types of businesses. But in any case,
it'll be a perfect fit for a lot of my coaching clients.
Yeah.
That we can convert into doing some short-term rentals. So
100%. Phillip, thank you so much for joining the Sip and Scale podcast. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Bye guys. Thanks for having me on the show.